Hi there, welcome to Between Screenings, where we talk about everything that happens between the screenings. We are a film podcast covering specifically festival-based films, but we will also stray into non-festival films, such as those of you that listened to us last time, discussing Funny Girl and Black Phone. Two very contrasting films. But today we're going to be looking at the London Film Festival, which has just finished. Both Tom and myself had a chance to check out quite a few of the films that played at the festival. Me going and watching some of them at home in Manchester as part of LFF on tour around the country. Tom at fancy Q&A screenings in London because he lives in London and gets to go to those sorts of things. So yeah, London Film Festival. Tom, tell us, what is LFF, Tom?
Well, LFF is London's film festival, as the name suggests. But London Film Festival has always been a bit of an odd beast in my mind because it doesn't, as we are going to discuss, it's growing place as a as an awards launch pad. But for the longest time, I always considered LFF sort of like an opportunity for people who couldn't afford to go to Toronto, Venice, and Cannes to watch the movies that had shown at those festivals. Like, it didn't seem to have much of an interest in showing, particular new premieres, but it always had a really interesting lineup. But they weren't necessarily, you weren't like, I remember when I was editing a movie site, Venice had Dune. Like that, it was the big premiere, and LFF wasn't getting those. It might have a few premieres, but it certainly wasn't the reason you were going to the festival.
No, and I think I remember reading an interview with Trisha Tuttle when she was the head of LFF, now at the Berlinale, and I remember sort of pretty confident it was her saying that sort of she understands London's place, and they're not one of those top tier festivals. So it's not Berlin, it's not Cannes, it's not Venice, it's not Toronto, it's not Sundance. So they didn't want to kind of try and pitch themselves as that. A lot of those festivals have markets attached and you get a lot of films being bought at those festivals. Some of those festivals are a lot more industry heavy. So something like Cannes, unless you're in the industry, you're probably not going to get into a lot of the screenings. They do screenings for the public, but because there's so few of them, getting tickets for them is very difficult. So LFF, I think, yeah, she sort of did say, look, we are a best of the fests, kind of the last big film festival of the year. There isn't really another one out between now and Christmas. And I think she's very cleverly placed it as this is where you get to see a roundup of the best titles that have come out of all those festivals across the year. And it is interesting how she doesn't seem to care. Well, she's not there anymore, but they don't seem to be bothered about world premieres. So if they have them, obviously they're going to be like, oh, this is a world premiere. But they opened with the new Knives Out film this year, and that had already played Toronto. Like that, it was a UK premiere, yeah, but it wasn't a world premiere. And I don't think many of the really big galas this year were world premieres. But if you live in London, you don't care. So you've not gone to Toronto, have you?
It's genuinely amazing. For 2 weeks of the year, the South Bank is like, you can spot celebrities. I'm not even joking. You just wander down there and you will see big names walking about just sort of like around the BFI, around the South Bank. It's really impressive. And, they have a very large auditorium at the South Bank, slightly uncomfortable seats, I'm not going to lie. Need a little bit more padding. But, you can get easily hundreds of people in there, and it's really good fun. I've done it both as a member of the press, and that's slightly different because when you're in the press, the P&I screenings in the morning, as opposed to the galas as they call them. But it's it has such a good atmosphere, is what I'd say. Like when I was living in Manchester, it was a highlight of the year coming down to LFF and trying to work out when you'd come down, like trying to fit in. Will like Glass Onion is on this day, so that means we have to be there on the Friday, but that means we can't be there on the Monday, and they're showing this on the Monday, and working out your schedule. It's always been just like a really fun, really enjoyable festival. And this year I was going far more as a member of the public. Equally, just like a really good vibe of people who like movies talking about movies, where there's no one on the phone. You don't need to go get an usher halfway through. It's just a good time at the pictures.
Yeah, and we're saying they're a best of the festival. I mean, I think they have themselves described it as that, but that's not all that they do. They did bring in the competition strand several years ago because it didn't used to have a competition strand to sort of elevate those films that were coming through, and those don't tend to be your big best of the fest films that are in the competition strand. So you still get those sort of world premieres or up and coming filmmakers in those smaller films that you can go and experience as well, alongside your Frankensteins and your Knives Out and all those kind of films. And I think that's the nice thing about a film festival in general. They've LFF's had, I think, Paddington has premiered at LFF in the past, and Matilda, the musical, opened LFF one year. And that's bringing a completely different audience. The people who come and see those films aren't going to hang around and watch Sirat
No.
or a film like that, a foreign language weird film where I literally can't describe it to you. It's kind of a road movie about a father looking for his lost daughter, but then it goes mad. Is all I can say. I would 100% suggest seeing it. The score on it is unbelievable. I actually saw it in Cannes, not at LFF. Which reminds me of a story. Another friend of ours, one of the Q&A hosts at Manif, Max, they went and saw a film at LFF this year and said they were doing the roving mic for the Q&As. And I don't like roving mics, as you know, Tom. So at Manchester Film Festival, I introduced asking questions via an app called Slido, where you scan it, and then the Q&A host gets it on an iPad and they can decide which questions to ask or not. And Max said he was at a screening where there was the exact reason why you want to do that. Because the mic went to this person, they took the mic and they were like, hi, I'd just like to say I saw this film in Venice. And that was
Amazing.
it.
Amazing.
Like
what
no
a great
question. Just wanted to show
Yeah.
off that they'd been to Venice. So I'm not trying to show off and say I went to Cannes. It's just I happened, that is a film that played LFF, which I believe is getting a release later this year. And it's fantastic. It really stayed with, it's one of those films that stays with you afterwards. So that's the great thing about something like LFF. You can go see a film like that, which is not a general audience film.
Mm.
You're not going to get people who go and see Matilda, the musical, or Knives Out going to see that. But yeah, it is interesting how LFF's sort of, because of, I think, the Best of the Fest vibe, has now become this sort of, and because it's kind of the last big festival of the year, it's become this big launch pad for the awards corridor. So it falls just before the award, all the awards films start coming out in cinemas. So these films that have played Cannes, that have played Sundance, that have played Toronto, that have played Venice, are all now getting released, and they kind of have their UK premiere at LFF. So you've got all these films with all this talent, all playing in the same week, and the studios are now plowing loads of money in to woo European Academy voters and to woo BAFTA voters and Critics Circle voters and everything else. My email inbox was pinging every other hour with an invite to another screening that wasn't necessarily part of LFF, was just an auxiliary screening, an additional screening of Frankenstein, an additional screening of House of Dynamite. Come and watch this, come and watch. It was mad. And that is just the courting of the BAFTA voters, the courting of the Academy voters, and the fact you can just get all the stars in one place. Because, like I say, they weren't mucking. Netflix weren't mucking around for Frankenstein. Like, there was everybody there.
No, they were not. Like, so I saw Frankenstein at a BAFTA screening, and it was Emerald Fennell doing the Q&A, and they had everyone. I mean, genuinely, like, didn't matter. You could tell that this was a contractually obligated thing.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
was not a, if you're about and fancy it, we're going to go do a Q&A. This was clearly we are making an awards push here. It's like you say, it makes sense when you find out that outside of the US, the UK has the most Academy voters. I think there's like 800 or something. Maybe 800 might be a bit too many, but there are a huge number here. Like, there's a reason. I mean, Wicked for Good, for example, did not show at
No.
LFF, but John M. Chu
He was everywhere.
was here. He was at the South Bank doing. I have friends who went and got selfies with him. Like, he did his masterclass speech about it, and then they showed a little bit of Wicked for Good, and then he was out putting the FaceTime in, making the effort. And it speaks to how important LFF is within the awards landscape. And that's I do think that is something slightly new. I'm not necessarily sure if that's always been the case. Although I will say one of my favorite things about LFF, every year they do the mystery film. And the mystery film is always, as the name suggests, you don't know what you're paying for. You get a ticket, you go, whatever shows. It's not part of the program. You have no idea. And in my time going, I've been told Steven Spielberg's plane has just touched down at Heathrow. This year, everyone was convinced it was going to be Wicked for Good. I've heard, I think one year was, I seem to remember one year was like Mission Impossible, maybe. And it's just that the outlandish things you hear people come up with for this festival. But I do think it speaks to, how its power and how as a festival that people do think, well, Spielberg could come at this point, and that isn't like a daft thing to say. Like, he genuinely could turn up. Maybe his private jet did touch down at Heathrow, and he was just going to a Netflix party.
I mean, it is possible.
Yes.
Although apparently he does spend a lot of time in Italy, so he might have just been refueling en route to Italy.
Well, Stephen, come on, sort it out. But one thing that really impresses me about LFF is this is because obviously I do the Q&As at Manchester Film Festival. Is my God, they are slick with them. They are just some of the best Q&As I think I've ever seen. But the Q&As they do pre the screenings are so good. Like I was watching, we'll talk about some of the movies we've seen, but like the one with Jay Kelly was one of the funniest Q&As I think I've ever been to in my life, and it was just really well put together. You had Adam Sandler, George Clooney, so I'm just goofing around, having fun. Really, really impressive. Just again, makes you excited. I know it sounds silly, it sounds like a bit romantic, but it makes you excited to watch movies, to see actors and talent who are so passionate about their films there to present them to you. Again, don't feel like they're contractually like I know I was said before the Frankenstein people were contractually obligated, but it doesn't feel like that because they want these films to do well.
And someone like Cannes, there is kind of the expectation that you're going to stay. The stars and the director are going to stay and watch the film. They have to sit there. They've got their designated seats, and they have to sit there and watch it. And they then have to have a camera shoved in their face while a standing ovation is going on, which is always very amusing. But at LFF, they don't have to stay and watch the film. So you said you went to see Jay Kelly, and George stayed. You said George stayed to watch, but Adam left. And where did George sit, Tom?
George sat 2 rows back from me because my partner was very excited. I was less excited because when we were it was a great movie, really enjoyed it. But as we were trying to leave, everyone wants to talk to George Clooney. So there's just this crowd of, well, no one wanted to talk to me. So it did make leaving very slow. And I wish people would think about me, the most important person in any room when we were leaving the cinema.
The big question is, though, Tom, did you say, wow, it's the Nespresso Man for a second time when seeing George Clooney?
Not this year, but yes, I did want at a previous LFF, after maybe one too many drinks when George Clooney walked out on stage, I did shout, oh my God, it's the Nespresso Man, to the laughter of the people around me and the pure fury of my then girlfriend, who was quite irritated that I
shouted. Your then girlfriend? What is she now?
Yeah, because now she's my fiance.
Ah, there you go. Sneak that in.
But yeah, no, like you say, like sometimes people stay, sometimes they don't. When we saw Rental Family, Brendan Fraser stayed to watch the movie, and at the end of the film, he got a round of applause. It wasn't 15 minutes, thankfully, but like it's slightly easier going, I think, than other festivals. I think it's a little less pretentious, perhaps.
Yeah. So you saw quite a few films. What was the favorite film you saw at LFF? What was your favorite?
So I've got 2 that I think are the ones that have stayed with me. Both Netflix movies, actually. So House of Dynamite, I really, really enjoyed House of Dynamite. House of Dynamite is a movie about what would happen in the event of nuclear war, essentially. Like, it plays out in real time, and you see it from 3 different perspectives. You never learn who launched the nukes. Like, you don't learn what happens after the timer runs out, and it is just this really, really powerful look at, like, what is the moral thing to do in a no-win situation. It's fascinating. Idris Elba, directed by Catherine Bigelow, genuinely super powerful. Just one of those movies where you come out of it and you go, wow, like, like an incredible movie. I never want to watch it again. I'll be honest with you. It's not the type of movie you're going to sit down with the kids on a Friday night, Neil, and say, girls, get in here. We're going to watch about the end of the world. My second favorite was Frankenstein. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. I like that. A big fan of Gothic horror, Gothic romance, all that stuff. It was everything I expected it to be, but that doesn't mean there weren't surprises. I thought it was magnificent. I thought it was
slightly different. We have a slightly different take on Frankenstein. So I also saw Frankenstein at home in Manchester as part of LFF. Me and head of programming from Manchester Film Festival, Carl Barlow, we went to see it. Initially, our seats were absolutely awful. So we were sat as close to the screen as you could get. But luckily, then some other people didn't come, so we moved a few rows back. I really, really enjoyed it. I think Jacob Elordi was fantastic as the monster. I think for me and for Carl, it kind of felt a little bit Netflixified as a film. So I think for me, I would have liked it to have just started when Victor was a young man. I didn't like the big action set piece of the monster going mad at the start of the film. I felt like that was very much a Netflix sort of, right, we've got to have a big action set piece in the first 5 minutes so people watch it and are really interested, and then it can get slower, because it kind of didn't fit like, if you put that scene at the end of the film chronologically, it didn't make any sense. Like, why was the monster suddenly on a killing rampage? Like, he was just indiscriminately killing sailors, and we've just spent the last hour learning how sensitive a soul he is.
I will disagree in that I do not doubt that there was someone from Netflix saying, "You got to start the picture with an action scene, kid. That's how, otherwise people will be on the phones." I've no doubt that that was a conversation, but I think we forget that Guillermo del Toro makes superhero movies. Like, he made Hellboy, yeah, and I think that
he made
has a
Pacific
certain
Rim, which I absolutely hated.
Yeah, it's not my favorite, to be
But then
polite
he's made
about a
Pan's
movie.
Labyrinth, so I forgive him.
Yeah, and I think that that is well within his cinematic oeuvre to
Yeah.
be like, let's start this with a bit of high action, worry about how it fits into the film after the fact. I will say, and this is something we both agree on, it feels long at times because it's 2.5 hours, but I was never bored, which is a really difficult feeling to describe. Like, because there were parts of it where I was like, I've been sat down for a while. I'm not bored, but my mind is starting to drift ever so slightly. I especially think, and I think this is potentially controversial, I think some of the stuff with the Christoph Waltz character, I was like, don't need this, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, he was and then I don't want to spoilers, but that character kind of, it doesn't really go anywhere either.
No.
And isn't dealt with once it sort of, they never really deal with any ramifications of interactions with that character. But I think for me, the biggest problem with it was Oscar Isaac never stood anywhere with lightning behind him shouting, "He's alive, he's alive."
No, he didn't. That's an excellent point.
We were all waiting for it. We were all waiting for "Is it alive? It's alive! It's alive!" And we didn't get it. Which, fair enough. I mean, you don't have to put that in, but just a little "It's alive" would have been nice.
My favorite moment while watching it was when the creature at one point washes up on a beach.
He does.
He's a stone white, like it's a very different looking monster than what you might expect Frankenstein to look like. And he's walking on a black sand beach. And I thought to myself, oh my God, it looks like the alien from Prometheus. And then I was like, Frankenstein's title is a modern Prometheus.
Yeah.
And then I realized they're both meant to look like Roman statues. You're an idiot, Tom. Like, this is very deliberate. They're both drawing from the same reference here. And I spoke to one of my friends, Clarice, who was on the jury of Manchester Film Festival last week, was telling me that is very, very deliberate. Like, that they didn't want Frankenstein to be grotesque. They wanted him to be beautiful. Because if you were making the ultimate man, you wouldn't make him, some flat top thing with bolts in his neck. You'd make him as gorgeous as you possibly could. And again, that's what Ridley Scott was going for with Prometheus. So there you go. Some very nerdy, very granular why Frankenstein looks like he does in that film.
Well, yes, lucky us, we get another Frankenstein film next year.
Oh.
We get Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride.
Oh. Okay.
Have you not heard of this?
No, I've not.
You'll have to go and watch the trailer afterwards. We got Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride, and we get an okay actor in Christian Bale playing the monster.
Hang on, I've just Googled it. Oh,
it looks good.
That makeup on Bale is...
It's Frankenstein's monster.
I mean, it is Frankenstein's monster, yes, but it's
it's a Herman Munster version of Frankenstein's monster. But
yeah. But I mean, listen, to go back to our path, I don't think I saw a bad film this year. Like, there was no film that I went to see and thought I didn't enjoy that. I know, again, though, we differ here slightly. There was one that you perhaps weren't as keen on as the rest.
I saw quite a lot of films previously at other festivals, and also I went and saw some of the stuff at home as part of LFF. There was some ones I loved. Pillion, I thought was fantastic. I think it asks a lot of it's funny. It's a gay BDSM dom sub relationship film, but I've read a lot about it afterwards as well, based on a book, and a lot of sort of questions come out of it, which is quite interesting. So I think definitely check that out. That's out later this month, I believe. First-time director, British director. Fantastic performance from the two leads in it, Alexander Skarsgård and Harry Melling, is it? Yeah, Harry Melling. So he's fantastic in it. The two of them are brilliant in it. So I definitely check that one out when that comes out in cinemas. But yeah, I've already talked about Sirat and Frankenstein. I saw Die My Love as well. which I really, really enjoyed. Very different, very, again, not a film I'll probably go back to watch. It's quite a tough watch, but Jennifer Lawrence is captivating in it, as she always is. Dreams I saw at the Berlinale, and that's just played LFF, and I didn't enjoy it. It's very much a Jessica Chastain driven film. I just found her performance amdram in it. I didn't buy it. Felt very, just the film itself didn't feel as polished as it could have done. I just didn't really buy into it in the way I wanted to. Normally I love Jessica Chastain. I think she's fantastic in Molly's Game, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed her in like 0-30, and like I enjoy her in films. I just didn't buy her in this film. I just felt it just wasn't great. There was loads of stuff that I should have enjoyed in it. Like, I liked the story of it. I think the dynamics of a rich white woman with a sort of wanting to be philanthropic and show how sort of woke she is, and how she loves this young boy from Mexico for his talent and for who he is. But then ultimately, when it comes down to it, she reverts to type and sides with her family and doesn't, chooses to keep the money.
Interesting that you don't. Again, it just
wasn't. Yeah, it just wasn't one for me. Maybe
Yeah.
I was tired and hungover when I watched it, and it just didn't vibe. Yeah, for me, that wasn't one for me. So it's not one I would have. After seeing it at the Berlinale, I wasn't like, oh, imagine this is going to be at LFF later this year. This is an absolute banger. Unlike something like Sirat and Pillion and Die My Love, which I saw at Cannes, and I was like, well, these are obvious titles you'd want to get in your festival. So yeah, it's a mix, but that's,
It was nominated for a Golden Bear. It's sitting on 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, so perhaps it's more.
My opinion's not always the consensus. I don't always agree with everyone else, but I just didn't get it. It just didn't click with me, which is fine.
Not quite your tempo.
No,
as I say, I had quite a good run this year. So we started things with Ballad of a Small Player, which is a Colin Farrell movie. Very light on its feet for the most part. Sort of has, he's again, trying to avoid spoilers, but he's a gambler who meets a woman, and that changes his life, shall we say. Really enjoyed it. Like, one of those films that when you're watching it, while really entertaining, Colin Farrell is just great value for money. Macau looks gorgeous. I don't know if you know Macau, but basically it's like the Chinese Las Vegas on an island, and he's playing like this gambling con man, and it's very funny. He's doing like getting to be. I think Colin Farrell is a very funny actor when he wants to be, and it sort of lets him stretch those muscles, stretch his dramatic muscles. It wasn't necessarily like feel essential, but certainly a movie that you're not going to regret watching. It's very similarly on that note. We had Is This Thing On, which is the bizarre John Bishop movie. Like, it feels like the making of this movie is a movie in itself. But for those who don't know, this is based on the Liverpudlian comedian John Bishop and how he got into comedy. He was going through a divorce. He went to a comedy club in Manchester, and while he was there, and he was on the door, and the guy said to him, "It's £15 to get in." And he was like, "I don't want to pay £15. The bouncer said, "Well, if you go on and do some stand-up, you can come in for a £5." So he was like, "Right, I'll do that." And he went on stage and he told jokes about getting divorced. And him and his wife fell back in love. Well, because he found his passion in life. And that obviously speaks to like Americans, because Will Arnett heard this story and was like, I need to make that into a film. It's really good. It's really, really funny. Like, again, much like Ballad of a Small Player, tonally, light on its feet, you're laughing, bit of drama, a little bit of everything. The odd thing about it is that the comedy club where John Bishop used to perform was round the corner from my old flat. So even though this is set in New York, I was pretending that's my street they're walking down. And the other bizarre thing about this film is that my aunt used to be friends with John Bishop. And before he became a comedian, she knew him when he was having the troubles with his wife. And there is a scene where the characters are at a house party. And I like to pretend, even though this is not the case, I'm not suggesting that they put this. Bradley Cooper, the director, was like, well, this is Maureen Willoughby's house. But I like to think that was my Aunt Maureen Willoughby's house that they were at when this happened. Sorry, I enjoyed that, but I think
just quickly on that one, it's nice that John Bishop. I mean, in a million years, he wouldn't have guessed that his life story was going to end up being portrayed on the screen by Will Arnett, directed by Bradley Cooper. But more importantly, it gives him an actual legitimate reason to be on Graham Norton. Because he's one of those guys where whenever you see him on Graham Norton, you're like, did they not have enough guests so they've just asked John to come on again?
John's always free. He's always got the time.
But now he can be on there and actually have a proper reason.
And finally, the other thing we saw, aside from Frankenstein and House of Dynamite, was Rental Family, which is a Brendan Fraser film set in Japan. It's about an unsuccessful actor and I didn't know this was a real thing, but essentially in Japan, you can rent people to be your family or whatever you need. So he starts doing this for several clients, and he forms a very strong bond with one of them who wants him to pretend to be the estranged father of a little girl so she can get into a good school. Brendan Fraser, obviously a superb actor, come back with The Whale. He's brilliant in this. Like it's one of those films that it's heartwarming. At points, I was choking up. Really, really moving. Again, looks great. Not potentially the most novel of things. I think everyone knows where it's going. You can see the dramatic peaks off in the distance when the film begins. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't come out of it thinking that's one that I'll definitely watch again and recommend to people. Like,
is it a remake of the Werner Herzog film?
No, but I think this came up during the Q&A. It's by Hikari, the director, and she made the Netflix series Beef.
Right. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Beef's class.
Beef's fantastic. This is, it's not as hard-edged as Beef. But again, one of those films that I really enjoyed, and I'm surprised how much I've thought about it since coming out of it. But as I say, the untouchables for me were A House of Dynamite and Frankenstein. I just thought they were the best things that I managed to get to see. Because, Neil, what did neither of us get into?
Neither of us. Even I RSVP'd as quickly as I could to the invite when it came through, but neither of us got tickets to the new Knives Out.
It's almost like it was the hottest ticket at the festival, and everyone wanted to see it. Yeah, that was a particularly harrowing day on Instagram when you'd look through people's stories and you'd see people who had got through on the ballot, and you were like, but not me. And now I have to spend the next week when's that? It's not out until December, is it? So I have to spend until December dodging spoilers that will inevitably be online already from people who did manage to get to see it.
Yes, I mean, to be fair, in terms of Q&As, he doesn't mind packing the stars in, does he, old Ryan, for his films?
No, he doesn't.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see if it gets a wider release than Knives Out 2. Because obviously Knives Out 2, one of the rare Netflix films that did get a theatrical. I believe AMC cinemas in the States are actually going to show Knives Out 3. I think they've softened slightly their stance on Netflix films. I know they are showing K-pop Demon Hunters when it gets its Halloween re-release. So it's going to be on more screens when it gets its re-release. Hopefully, Wake Up Dead Man will get a wider release. And I'll be able to get a ticket this time.
Yes. I know I'm planning on going when it does hit cinemas. We're planning a trip because there's absolutely zero chance I'm waiting for it to come to streaming.
No, yeah, I'll be going to see that in the cinema, 100%. And assuming once we know it's BBFC classification, I will either or won't be going with my children because they may or may not be old enough, depending on if it's a 12 or a 15.
Well, it's Knives Out. What's Glass Onion? It's Glass Onion at 12.
Not sure. Yeah, not sure.
Only be for language, wouldn't it? Anyway.
Yes. So if it's only for language, I allow my children to listen to swearing because they hear me doing enough of it. That is good parenting, by the way. I've managed to convince my children that swearing is deeply uncool by me doing it all the time.
Very clever.
I think that's me doing a service as a parent, personally. And I'm sticking to that excuse.
Have I ever told you my Daniel Craig Knives Out?
12. It's a 12. We can go.
Yeah, there you go. A day out already planned.
Yeah, done.
Have I told you my Daniel Craig Knives Out Knives Out story to give it its full title?
I don't.
Anecdote of after the P&I screening when the film was at LFF, we all trundled down the road to the Mayfair Hotel where they were having a press conference with the entire cast. Got an incredible seat, one row in front of Daniel Craig, and I was doing social media for the website I worked on at the time. So as they filed in, I was recording them on my phone and, like doing a sweep along the table. And as I did it, it sat right on the right-hand side was Daniel Craig, and we locked eyes and he scowled. I didn't think he was, and I remember thinking, like, he's not scowling at me. So anyway, they're doing the Q&A, and I'm doing the journalism thing of sending these clips to someone else to put up online. And they were saying, Daniel Craig has just shot you evils in this video, and I felt it through the camera phone. And I was like, oh God, he really did. He really wasn't pleased with me. So that is my one very brief interaction with Daniel Craig. I can't understand why he didn't let me interview him for James Bond.
Strange. But also, you did see him on the stage in New York as well, didn't you?
We did indeed, in the strangest theatre experience of my life, when me and my fiance went to New York to see him, not to see him, but while we were there, we went to see Daniel Craig doing Macbeth because we didn't want to do something we could just see on the West End. A very stripped back show. All the budget had clearly gone on getting Danny Boy over there for the show, and people sat next to us. Daniel Craig walked out on stage to give his first monologue, and someone took a picture. The people on either side of us took photos of Daniel Craig on stage, looked at them to make sure they were okay, stood up and left the theatre, and never came back. And
That is an expensive photo.
it was at least a $200 photo. That's what I'd say. And and when we went outside, when the show was over, those people were stood by the stage door waiting so they could presumably, I don't know, get his autograph. Maybe I genuinely have no idea. They weren't very interested in Shakespeare, though. That's all I'd say. So fake fans.
Shocking behaviour. Well, yeah. So neither of us got into Knives Out, but we are both very excited for it. So that's good. And then I think just to wrap this one up, we said we were going to talk about the difference between mainstream movie culture and film festivals. I think we've mainly touched on that. But I think the main thing for me is, at a film festival, even a film festival the size of LFF, even a film festival the size of Cannes, Toronto, and those places, you'll get to see films that may not go anywhere else. They might just do the festival circuit. They might end up on streaming, but they might not be sold in your country because they might, especially with a lot of the foreign language films, we as English speakers are pretty crap watching foreign language films. So if you want to go and see something different that people who know about films have watched and decided, no, this is good enough for us to give screen time at our festival, because no matter how big the festival is, you have limited screen time. There's a limited number of films you can show, and there is hundreds of films you turn down. So they've decided, these films are worthy of us showing. So go and just try some stuff out. Like, see, it's lovely being able to go and see Knives Out and get to see that Q&A with Josh O'Connor and Daniel Craig and everyone there. That is exciting if you manage to get into those, or be at J. Kelly when you've got the likes of George Clooney sat 2 rows behind you. But if you've not got into those big films, go and check out some of the little stuff, see what's going on, because I think those things are just worth checking out. And you're not going to get the experience to go and see those. They're not going to be out in the cinema next week or on Netflix in the next month. So I think that's the real difference, is you get in the space of a week, you could be watching 4 or 5 films a day if you wanted to. And 4 or 5 very starkly different films in terms of tone, ambition, budget, all those sorts of things.
I mean, I completely agree. I think it's one of the most interesting things for me is because obviously I'm friends with a number of film critics, and like you think everyone's going to be at everything, the big ones, but no, like if you check out people's Instagram or social media, quite often they'll be at smaller things that you've never heard of and will disappear like after they show this festival and then they're gone.
So yeah, I mean, just if you've not been to a film festival before, go, they are for the general public. There isn't a film festival in the United Kingdom that isn't for the general public. Like, you can buy tickets and go to any of the film festivals there are in the United Kingdom. There's loads of local film festivals that are showing big films, that are showing smaller films, that have Q&As. So go and check them out. I think we've probably rambled about LFF for long enough. I think we'll leave talking about awards season for a future episode. I think there's a lot we could discuss about that coming out of LFF, because I think a lot of the titles that played there are getting some serious early awards buzz. A lot of them I've not quite seen yet, and they're going to be coming out in the next few weeks. So I think we maybe wait until we've seen some of those films first. But we're going to be back next week. We are going to film next week because next weekend is the spookiest time of year. We're heading into Halloween, so we're going to do a little horror film special where Tom's going to talk about all the Halloween films he's not going to talk about all the Halloween vast detail, although we could do a special on the Halloween films easily,
I
and it would last 4 hours.
I once left an LFF screening early to go to the Halloween Ends pre-screening that night, much to the fury of my partner.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the sorts of films you might want to watch on Halloween, but also how horror's kind of had this little resurgence this year with some of the films that have kind of broken out of the horror mold. So that's what we'll be rambling on about next episode and giving you some ideas on what to watch on Halloween. And if you don't like horror films, we're going to be talking about films that are kind of horror adjacent.
No, we're not. We're going to be talking about some really, really mucky movies. Some real horrible stuff.
The proper horrible slashers.
Yeah. Right. Bye.
Cool. Well, that's it. So make sure, come back, follow us, subscribe, get us where you get all of your podcasts. We're going to be back next week talking about all things Halloweeny and horror. Who knows? Who knows if you're watching us on YouTube? We could even have some special Halloween decor if we're that excitable. That's one for you to sort out now, Tom, is to make your room look Halloweeny for next week.
Amazing. I could do that. Are you going to have a slightly Halloweeny background?
Do it.